Can you see me now?
We can see you, and we are hopefully live right now. Sorry about the technical difficulties, folks. We are currently broadcasting just to Facebook. Just a minute here as we try to figure everything out. All right, looks like we are live on Facebook. So thank you guys for joining us. For those who normally join through YouTube, so sorry, we're gonna figure this out for next week. Sometimes you just run out of broadband, even in not rural areas. So we'll figure it out for next time, but looks like folks are jumping on now. So again, sorry about the delay. We'll wait for a few more folks to jump on. If you see me looking like I'm clicking away, it's because I am trying to make sure we've got all of our ducks in a row here. But thanks for being patient as we figure out what is happening now. All right, some more folks are jumping on. Glad to have you guys. Welcome to Facts Only Friday. We've got two very special guests this week, our Vice President, Justin Tupper, and Marketing Committee member, Brett Crosby. So we got South Dakota and Wyoming and myself, Washington, D.C. in the house. So very exciting. Let us know where you're coming from or where you're rather calling in from. Drop a note in the comments below. Let us know you're here. Let us know that the audio is working. Again, we had some technical difficulties, so just let us know that you're here and watching. We'll wait another minute for folks to jump on. All right, Justin, you had a sale day today and you said you just wrapped up. How did that go?
We did. It was good. We had a little over 1,500 cattle, yearling market that was probably a little higher, way up cows and bulls steady. And then we had a turnout bull sale. So had a good crowd around and good kind of market for everything that's going on.
Excellent. And Brett, what was on the docket today for you besides a million calls with us? Apologies for that.
Oh, we were testing bulls and hauling cattle and trying to gather some.
There we
so,
go. Big day.
Nothing much.
Nothing much. No big deal. Well, it looks like we've got folks on and interested and captivated. We've got a few folks watching. Kevin Escobar watching from Florida. Rodney Richardson, so sorry to hear your screen is frozen in Colorado. Hoping you got that fixed. Danny Jennings, hello from Iowa. Of course, Reen Crispin says, there you are. Yeah, sorry about that, Reen. I think we've got it fixed now, but we'll just dive into it. Today, we want to talk about the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, or the CFAP, I think we're calling the acronym. But this was announced Tuesday at the White House, at an event at the White House. President Trump was there with Secretary Perdue and a few other stakeholders. Said some pretty interesting comments too, but I'll let Vice President Tupper get into that. So this week has been busy for us. We've been diving into the details, really trying to understand the program and understand where USDA is coming from with some of these details, and maybe trying to figure out where we can go next. As some of you who have already dived into the program know, it's very confusing. It might not be written as best as it could have been. There's certainly room for improvement. So we're going to talk about that here tonight. And so I'll turn it over to Vice President Tupper now to kind of talk about where we've been this week and maybe touch on some of the president's comments earlier in the week and how we've engaged members on the process, and just lead us on a brief overview there.
Sure, Leah. So a couple of things that I think one of the things that has happened here is the USDA, in the dealings that I've ever had, and that Leah and we've been in DC, moving fast is not necessarily the nature of how they work. And President Trump and they moved that money over there and said, get it out there to producers and go to work on that. And And we had some discussions early on. Brett had worked through some things, and I know NCBA also did, of trying to get a package out there that we thought would work for everybody. Well, USDA got a hold of it and they threw it in their OMB, I believe is the acronym, and they got to go through their whole spiel. And then we came up with what we got. And I'm just going to go out on a limb before I dive into it, that it definitely falls short, and it leaves us scratching our head, wondering why some of the things are the way they are. So just to get it kicked off, first off, if you sold cattle from January 15th to April 15th, there is a column. It's called CARES Act Part 1 Payment. If you've been on their website or seen the little piece of paper that they have that has it all on there. And that would be if you sold cattle from January 15th, which is a question mark that Brett and I will be talking about here in a little bit, why we go back to January 15th, but there to April 15th. And if you did sell cattle that were less than 600 pounds, you get $102 a head. If you sold cattle that were over 600 pounds, you get $139. If you sold fat cattle in that time frame, you get $214 a head. If you sold a mature cow, a mature bull, anything of that nature, you get $92 a head. And it says all other cattle, $102 a head. And I'm not sure exactly what would fall into that all other, but pigs over less than 120 pounds, you get 28 bucks. Hogs 120 pounds or more, you get 18. And all sheep, and this was a strange one to me too, and we'll talk about this, less than 2 years old. If you sold them and they were less than 2 years old, you get $33 a head. So the confusing part, there's a second column to that chart. And what that is an inventory number, the way we understand it. And that inventory can be the highest inventory that you have on or between April 15th and May 15th. And basically for all cattle, you would get $33 a head. The way we understand it, that would be $33 for a cow and $33 for a newborn calf. If he was born before May 15th or 16th, that might be May 16th, I can't remember. But that's basically the way it would be. And hogs would be $17, and all sheep less than 2 years old would be $7. Those are an inventory number. So that would mean you could go through and inventory all the cattle that you may have in a feedlot, you may have at your house, you may have on grass. Brett and I will talk about some things that we have on grass. And that would be the number that you would add up and get paid from the government in this CARES Act package. Two more things, and then I'll throw it back to Leah and Brett. The FSA is going to administer this program. The FSA is not equipped to handle all these ranchers that they're going to get come Tuesday morning. If you have not been an FSA, and I shouldn't say member, but if you haven't been into the FSA office and you haven't given all your information, which would be your mailing address, where your address, and all of the pertinent things that they're going to ask, it's going to take way longer. The other problem where I live, and I think it's where Brett lives too, we've talked about this, FSA offices are not open. They are only open to calls, and no walk-ins, and then they can help you on the computer. Well, I've already talked to quite a few of the ranchers around me, and I'm not much better. I don't know how I get on these Zoom things, but my wife does it. They're not going to be able to get this. So there's going to be a cumbersome process as we get this thing started. I'll leave that overview at that, and I'd throw it to Leah or Brett, and then we'll take some questions. But that's a rough overview of how we think it fits. One of the questions I'm going to pose to Brett and the USDA is, so if I sold a baby calf in that time frame and it brung $150, do I now get $102 because I sold a baby calf? Technically, in the way it's written, I'm not sure, but I'll throw it to Brett or Leah.
Interesting. Yeah. And Brett here is Brett Crosby of beefbasis.com, Custom Ag Solutions, and also helps us out on our marketing committee with diving into numbers. So Brett, I'll let you get a little bit deeper here than surface level before we go into questions, because we're already getting quite a few.
Okay. The short answer is anything you've sold. It doesn't matter whether it was a cull cow or a cull bull, a baby calf. Yes, Justin, that's the way it's written. You're going to get paid for, and you're going to I think the slaughter animals, I'm looking at the camera now, but I think the cull cows and cull bulls qualify for around $90 a head. And and then, as you said, any calf under 500 or under 600 pounds, you're going to get $102. So, if you're able to have a bunch of twins and sell them off, then you got paid pretty well. The problems that we see with this is that while they picked January 15th, because that's when COVID was, that's when the breaking news started. That's when the futures started to move. Really, the market didn't start to move until March, around March 1st to March 15th. And so, and my background is in economic consulting. I've done a lot of economic work and research with a lot of extension economists through Custom Ag Solutions and in building our beef basis website. And I still research the market a lot. So I had a lot of data, and I pulled it all up, and if you follow me on Twitter, then you already saw. But for example, if you sold fat cattle between January 15th and March 15th, the average live cattle price in that time period was 121.98. If you get $214, I think it is, Justin, you're probably looking at the numbers.
Yes.
Then based on the average slaughter weight in that time period, you're going to net $1.39 for those live cattle. When really the market wasn't that bad. 122 was not great, but it was okay. From March 16th to April 15th, then the price averaged 115. You still, with you're before that April 15th deadline, and you still get your $214. So you're going to net around 132. But then that, a lot of us had a lot of live cattle. We had cattle on feed that we just couldn't move. And that's where we have the problem, because that's when the market was really tight. It really dropped. That's when we saw $1.03 cash after April 15th. So between April 15th and May 17th, cash averaged not cash, all live cattle averaged 105, and you only get $33 a head, so you're netting 107. And it's the same on the feeder cattle side. If you sold the feeder cattle index between January 15th and March 15th was 139.92. Not great, but by the time you add in, if you were selling a 7-weight steer, by the time you add in your $139, you would have netted, you'll end up netting 157 for those calves. Between March 15th and April 15th, the index dropped down to around, this is the weighted average. So it's the total weight sold in that time period divided by the total value of the cattle sold in that time period divided by the total weight. 122 for an 805 pound steer is what it comes out at, but you get your $139, then you're made whole and you net 139 on those cattle. But then while the feeder cattle index stayed roughly the same from April 15th through May 17th, it averaged 120, about 122. You still only get $33. And so, if you sold them April 14th, you get $139 a head. If you sold them April 16th, you get $33 a head. Why they picked I don't know why they picked tax day to as an arbitrary date, I don't know, but I think hopefully there is another round of funding coming, and they can fund the second and third quarters better, or maybe we can still get some modifications to this to change the date and the dates on these so that they more match the losses. But that's where we are on that.
Absolutely. And we've got just over 100 people tuned in now, which is really incredible. We host events all across the US, and most of the time, that's what it is. We've got producers in a room, so it's really cool to be able to be doing this virtually. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to go to our questions now, because we do already have quite a few, and I'm sure we'll keep getting them as we start talking. So first off, let's go to Patrick Robinette, new USCA member. Thanks for joining, Patrick. What constitutes as a sale? Is it a private treaty, slaughter, sale barn? What are they considering a sale?
I'll take a stab at that. I believe, and it isn't really well defined, but we would go to what, and I think Brett will agree with me on this, is any sale. That would be if they were sold privately and it was dated within that, if they were sold at a sale barn, they were sold on a video. I know we've had some discussions, Rain Crispin and I did, about what about cattle that were sold prior to the April 15th and they weren't picked up yet. Technically, in our opinion, and again, these are going to have to be a few clarifications, and maybe Brett has got some clarifications on this and I haven't heard from. Technically, to me, they're sold. Those cattle would have been sold and just not picked up yet. So that's what we believe. I don't know, Brett, if you got any other clarification for sure on that, but that's what we believe.
That's the way I understand it. The way I understand it is that the sale is considered executed once a price is established, and who actually has the physical animals, where those are I don't think matters. I don't even know if the check needs to clear. I think once the price is established, it's considered a sale.
That's what we believe. Hopefully that answers your question, and thanks for becoming a USCA member.
Yes, thank you. And of course, let's see here. That was a few questions there. We've got folks from all over the US. I just saw Tennessee and Australia tuning in, so some two very different parts of the world. Okay, Rodney Richardson asks, so let's say you are a seed stock bull provider and have a spring sale of 100 bulls. Will you get the CFAP payment for both the inventory and sale payment?
No. If you had a sale prior to April 15th, those bulls that you sold would be considered in the sale. And I don't know if that is in the other cattle of 102, or if that would be, I would guess that'd have to be all other cattle. That's where those seed stock bulls would have to fit, I think. So no, you would not be able to qualify them also as inventory. Their mothers, obviously, and their offspring from this year would be, but those bulls would be considered in the Part 1 payment from the sale, and the rest of your livestock would be in the inventory. And you add the sum of those two up, and that would be the total of your payment. One thing we forgot to mention up till now is also you're going to get 80% of your payment once the application is processed. 20%, it is stated in there, is to be paid at a later date. And part of the reasoning that was given on that was to make sure there's enough funding to go around. I'm not sure how that all spells out, but that's the fine print of what it said, that 80% would be upfront and 20% at a later date. Anything else on that, Brett?
No, that's the way I understand it too.
All right. Hopefully that answers it, Rodney. If you've got any follow-up. Oh, Brett, did I cut you off? Go ahead.
Well, I think going forward, it's not productive to complain about it. What we need to do is try to get something changed. And so I think going forward, we have two options. there is an outside chance that maybe we can work with them on changing some of their parameters before they actually write checks. Or, hopefully, I mean, they're throwing money everywhere, every which way. And, there is a possibility that we'd qualify for another stimulus round. And that would be where we would try to get some relief for the second and third quarters. Putting them in priority, the sectors that I worry the most about are, number one, the feedlot sector. Those guys are going to lose $400 a head this summer, if you believe the futures, and they've already lost $200 to $300 a head, and they're backing up cattle that are going to be discounted for yield grade and everything else. I really worry about the feedlot sector. And then the guys that have cattle on grass also have taken a hit. If they bought those cattle in January, February timeframe before the prices started to drop, then as it stands today, selling them at 800 or 900 pounds in August and September, they're not even going to get their first cost back. So, those are, and then the cow-calf producers, yeah, we're gonna take a hit, but I don't think it's going to hit our sector as much as it will hit those of us who run stockers or who have cattle on feed and have been trying to market them. The other problem is, gosh, I mean, everyone north of Kansas has been trying to sell cattle since the end of March, and we would have loved to sell them before April 15th, and we couldn't. And meanwhile, there were 3 weeks straight that formula trade made up 91% of the kill. So the packer was taking cattle from everyone that they had formula agreements with, and those of us who were trying to negotiate cash were just left out in the cold. And so, we're kind of being punished twice. So I think that we address first the feedlot, then the stockers, and then the cow-calf guys, if we have a chance to work with the USDA.
And I would just add quickly to that I don't think there's going to be any change to this part of it. The people that I've talked to, they're rolling this thing out on Tuesday. Yeah. So I think that the changes are going to have to come with additional either added months or added funding or however it may be done. And I think a lot of the guys I talk to, instead of maybe throwing more money at it, let's try to get this cattle market fixed. Let's try to get this glut of fat cattle through. Let's work on some things to make that happen. And that's what I hear a lot from. And I agree with Brett on one thing for sure, is that the feedlot sector and the grower sector, however you want to classify them, we can't lose any of those guys. And if they take a hit like they might take on some of these stalker type cattle, however you want to classify them, like I said, then we're going to lose people in the chain, and we can't afford to lose any of them. So I think additional needs to happen. We need to be engaged with them, and hopefully we can do that. But just from the people I talk to, I'm afraid, because it's rolling out Tuesday, this is what we're going to live with for a moment. And I do definitely agree with Brett that we need to look forward. This is the cat's out of the bag. This is what it is. And now we got to figure out how to get on top of it and get to some more money to the people that are going to need it.
Absolutely. Well, great answers there, guys. Appreciate very thorough ones. We're going to go back to the comments section. We'll talk about next steps here at the end of this live video. I want to get through as many questions as possible. So if you guys want to drop any questions that you've got in the comments, feel free. We'll try to get through all of them. It looks like we've got a few that, are about the same. So if we think we've already answered your question and we skip it and we didn't answer it, feel free to maybe word it a different way and drop it back in those comments. Oh, it looks like my dad's watching. So hello, Dad. Thanks for tuning in. If you are still here, I do owe you a call, so I apologize for that. Byron Hardesty said that he talked to his congressman staffer today and said that there was going, and she said that there was going to be $14 billion available in July as authorized through the CARES Act. And so that's going to help those that missed the April 15th date. Says, I believe this initial funding being dispersed was $9 billion, but just what she said, I wouldn't count on it though. So, and I might have to take this one, but what are thoughts here on this next round? I don't know that I might not have explained that question well enough, but have you guys been hearing this? Is there 14 billion that's going to be coming later? What does this a first round look like compared to the second round?
I'll be quick and send it to Brett. I have not heard of anything that is official. There was 16 billion that was allotted in this, and there's two different money funds, and I think Brett gave an explanation on this, so I'm going to leave that to him. Why they called one a CCC and then the other the CARES Act. That's just two different places they take the money. But I'll throw that to Brett. But I have not heard of anything that is official. You know, there's several bills out there that they're trying to put some funding to, and hopefully, like Brett said, we can get our foot in the door and they can talk to some people that have boots on the ground and understand where the needs are. But Brett, if you want to speak to that 16 billion and where they're taking some of that money.
Well, yeah, they're splitting it between all of the livestock groups. So all of the interested, all of the livestock stakeholders, all of the people who raise the different species. I think we get about roughly 5 billion, and of that, they've split it into two separate funding mechanisms. One is the Commodity Credit Corporation, which has traditionally been a way for grain growers to hold on for better prices. They'd be able to take a loan on their wheat or their corn through the CCC, and then if the price didn't come up above that loan rate, then they could just forfeit their commodity to the CCC. Those of us on the cow-calf side of the world don't really, we're not really familiar with it, but that's where the $33 a head is coming from, is the Commodity Credit Corp or the CCC. Then the other side of it that just covers the first quarter of 2020 is coming from the CARES Act, and it's that's where I don't know why they broke it out that way. And then of course there's the $3 billion that they're going to use to buy beef from, they say the farmers, but it sounds like they're buying it from the packers, which is completely counterproductive. Leah, I missed that call. How are they planning to just buy meat from packers, or are they going to buy cattle and have packers kill them? What do you know?
Sure, for the food boxes, right?
Yeah.
The 3 billion in food boxes, those have been those fundings have been distributed to all sorts of different folks across the U.S. and they will work out the details for how the funding goes from there. But I do just want to go back to the question real quick, and let me remember who asked this. So Byron, we've got a great answer here in the comments from Chris Clayton, who is a DTN Progressive Farmer reporter, who said, to answer to your question, yes, the CARES Act has another $14 billion that will fund the Commodity Credit Corporation at the beginning of July. The CCC money being used now was already in that account. So it's just a matter of moving funding around in accounts. I'm sure you guys are pretty used to moving billions of dollars around in your banks. So thanks for the question. We've got plenty of great questions here. I guess I'll shoot back here to Chris Clayton, who asks, so if you had fed cattle that were supposed to go to the packer before April 15th, but they did not sell until later, I'd like to interview you. So wasn't a question, but it was a highlight here. If you'd like to talk to Chris Clayton there in the comments, just shoot him an email or a Facebook message and get an answer there from him. So let's go to Amelia Menz in the comments, who asks, what about contract growers with a stake in profit and loss? They don't own the cattle, but share an outcome. Are there provisions for these folks? So contract growers with a stake in profit and loss, are there provisions for these folks? And that comes from Amelia Menz.
I do have a partial answer in that, because I do own some shares in some feedlots, and we feed cattle. So I think this is somewhat relative to what she's asking, that when the company feeds cattle, and depending on which state and how that is structured, technically you as a shareholder would own parts of those cattle. So if they are turned in and there is were sold during that time at $214, I believe, and again, this will be a little bit subjective, I believe that you would get a stake in that, because technically you were owner of those cattle, or whatever portion you were. And I don't know if that applies 100% to what she asked, but I do know that I have some stakes that way, and we feed cattle that way because the company owns them, and they will turn in that 214. It'll get dispersed amongst the shareholders. So I think that's somewhat relevant. I don't know, Brett, anything else?
I think that's right. I don't know for sure, but that sounds, yeah, generally they'll split up payments between shareholders. So yeah, you generally have a percent ownership column that you check for a lot of those payment programs. For example, disaster relief on drought years, you're going to split up your percent ownership or percent share on the ground, and it's going to be split between you and the lessee, if you are leasing it. So I think that they are familiar with how to do that, and I would expect that they probably plan to. But again, that's just speculation.
It all seems like speculation at this point. And it may seem like, we're speculating quite a bit, but we are going to have conversations in the days ahead with both USDA. We're on the phone with the White House today. We're going to be talking to FSA next week. We're reaching out to our members of Congress. We're really trying to get these answers for you guys. So if it seems like we, aren't quite sure, or we're wavering on a few things, just know that we're going to have definitive answers in the weeks ahead here. So definitely before that May 26th opening day. So if you've got questions, drop them in the comments and we'll make sure they get answered by the correct people. So Amelia, I hope that answered your contract growers questions. We're going back to the comments again. Brett Futman, I hope I said your last name right. He asks, will baby calves born in March and April be covered, or do they need to be in inventory January 15th, like feeder cattle?
There is a technical, if you read the fine print, it does include their offspring. That's what made us believe that you will get $33 for them if they were born before the May, I saw that here, 14th. I think I said 15th earlier, but if the way it looks to me in reading through it, and we haven't been able to get anybody to give us any better, clearer definition, is that if they were born before May 14th because they are offspring, and they allude to offspring in one of their explanations, that's what makes us believe that you'll get 33 for the cow and 33 for the calf.
Anything to add there, Brett, or does that about sum it up?
I agree.
I agree. All right. Easy question. Hope that answers it for you, Brett. And if it doesn't, drop us another comment question. All right. So Cindy Piper Richmuth asks, what are your thoughts on the current caps at $250,000 per person and entity? Should they be raised?
I'll take a quick moment and I'll let Brett kind of sum this up. But it started out, we were told it was going to be at 125, and we were for sure in belief at US Cattlemen that was too low. You don't have to feed very many cattle or own very many cattle to 125,000 doesn't go very far. 250,000, I think that we're in the neighborhood. I think that's probably an okay thing. It does get some significant help to those small and medium-sized feedlots, and those big feedlots, then they can't just stand there and rake in the money because they have way more. They're already working on margins. If they make $5-10 a head, they can live on that. Brett Crosby and myself, if they make $5-10, we went backwards, because we just don't feed the kind of numbers they do. So I guess I think from my own personal standpoint, and we've had several conversations on this with USCA leadership, that we were semi-comfortable with the 250,000 for lack of a better term. Brett?
Yeah, just to give you a breakdown, 85% of the cattle that are marketed in the U.S. come from lots that sell 1,000 head or more a year, and so if you're and 75% of them come from lots that sell more than 5,000. Roughly 60% of the feedlots sell between 5 and 40,000 a year, and so that's kind of where the core part of the industry lies, and that's where we're going to get hurt the worst, because if you take say a 12,000 head feedlot, which is really a small feedlot, but over just one quarter, they're going to be marketing 3,000 head. Multiply that by $400, and $250 doesn't even buy them a pizza by the end of the day. So 250,000. I mean, and so they're they're going to your family, your farmer feeders, your family feedlot, your small feedlot operations of 1,000 to 15, 20,000 head. They're the ones that are going to lose upwards of $1 million in this. And yeah, the 250 is not even close to enough. I think in the other sectors, 250 is probably, it's probably adequate. It's the feedlot sector that I think you really need to focus on with the caps.
Absolutely. Good answer. Good question. Rodney Richardson jumps back in again on the comment section and asks, aren't the feedlot and stocker guys covered by the hedge?
I'm not. I'll answer that. I'll bet Brett is, but that's his business. He does a lot of that. I do not. And I know a lot of people that feed cattle just like I do, and I'm not covered by a hedge. Now, in the proposal that we sent in, that Brett, I know, did a lot of work on, and we don't have to get into details on that, but we did talk a lot about whether they made money or not, and some of those adequacies I'll give you an example. On March 30th, I sold a pen of cattle that made $270 a head. I was partially hedged in that, took a little profit, and they're going to fall in and they're going to pay $214. So when you shake your head at how they thought through or did not think through some of this and how they went about it, if they'd have got a few more industry guys in the room, they could have got a lot more feasible, better plan, and maybe got more of this money to where it needed to go. Now, the one good thing, I guess, that I see in that is a lot of them guys, myself included, we may have made a little money on those cattle, but the cattle coming up are going to take a butt kicking. So you take that they gave you in January, February, and March and apply it to the cattle that are coming up that are probably not going to work. Is that the proper way to do it? I don't know, but that's what we got. So I guess that's a tough question to ask. Again, it just has a lot to do with the application here that we saw a lot of faults in, but that's where we are. Yeah,
and remember that before this, we were in a situation where we expected, we saw that there was a marketing window that was going to be short cattle, because people, instead of selling feeder cattle in August and September, because of the Tyson fire and the price action, they held on to them. And instead of coming out in January, February, March, they were coming out in March, April. And so there were a lot of people who placed those cattle and then were waiting to lock in a price until they saw that marketing window. As far as the stalker guy goes, there was a very short window to actually hedge a profit on grass cattle, and a lot of people were kind of biding their time, and it depends on the hedge strategy, but you know, a lot of people average in. I average my hedges in, and so I'm partially hedged, yeah, but I'm not hedged all the way. And I think a lot of people are in that situation. Regardless, you know, whether they were hedged or not, it shouldn't matter, because you certainly don't want to punish people for trying to manage their risk. So it shouldn't factor into the eligibility for a payment.
Great. So hope that answers that for you. In the comments there. We've got a few more that's coming in, and I love it. Thank you guys for the engagement tonight. We usually don't get this many questions. So just goes to show there's a lack of clarity around this program, and we're going to keep going and answering a few more questions, but we are reaching the top of the hour. So if you have any burning thoughts left, please get them down in the comment box. We're going to go to Greg Wolf. Why was feeder weight cattle not prorated? 601 versus 1,000, all pay the same.
I'm just going to say, good question. And that's all I'm going to say to that, because anytime that you can lump in one that weighs less than 600 and then one that's over and somehow think that's the same kind of law, I mean, that's just terrible management of the program right there. I'll leave it at that, because I'll just say things that I shouldn't say about it, but that doesn't fit. And great question.
Appreciate you censoring yourself.
Yes,
Mr. Vice President. Brett, any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, well, the short answer is because it's easy. I mean, you know, it becomes complicated very quickly when you start trying to factor in weight, and then people are gonna say, well, what about quality and all of those things? And no, it's not fair. And yes, it should have been done by weight class, but then you've got to get into slides and everything else. And you know, they didn't want to do the math, even though it's easy for us to do. We weren't asked our opinion on how this was going to work.
Well, and that's a perfect transition into our wrapping up closing statements, and especially because Greg Wolf comes back with a few more comments here asking who did have input on the structure of this program, and the always favorite, is it too late to correct this mess? So I guess we'll talk next on what happens now. So I guess just a broad overview, we're looking at maybe top 2 or top 3 things that we'd like to fix with this program, correct? We've got the time frame. We need that to be either extended or changed or moved or somehow. We've got the fact that the program's not tied to direct losses. We've got the fact that the payment limits might be a little bit too strict. I'm sure there's more I'm forgetting and missing, but what happens next? How do we fix this? What's the next strategy or plan, so folks here don't leave feeling too hopeless, because there is a path forward and we are working on it. But I'll bounce now to you guys to talk about how we navigate the structure.
Well, I think most of the people that I deal with would rather us fix some of the problems within the cattle market than stand around and waiting at the mailbox or the FSA office or however. But we know there's a lot of challenges there. I do think that this is one time where the cattle industry, they've got to help. It was nothing to do with anybody's any management tool or anything they did. The reason that we're in some of these problems, we've got packers today bidding $1.20, and we've got a June live board hovering below $1. I mean, there are serious issues going on, and we've got to get some of this done. And we can blame some of it on COVID-19, and we've got, kills that are way less. And we understand all these things, but we have to have a market that functions. We need it to converge. We need this market to get back on track so we can figure out some of the things like Senator Grassley's bill 50 and 14, so we can move on some of these things with mandatory price reporting and get back to a more normal type movement of cattle. So going forward, I do believe there's probably going to be some kind of more stimulus, what they're going to call it, part 4, part 5, part whatever. I don't know. I don't know when they can. Sometime they have to stop printing money. We do want to get some of our producers whole. We've got to. The one good thing about what Brett said earlier about the feedlot sector, if those guys make money, they're going to come back and spend money on our calves and our stocker cattle. If they lose money, they're not coming back, or they're coming back at a price that's way less. So to make sure that those guys get something in this time of need when they're going to lose, I think is very important. That'd be one of the things I think we got to look at. As a cow-calf guy, I'm the same as Brett. I'm not sure you can look at that. If you get $66 today, we don't know. I mean, we're a long ways. Some of these summer sales are going to start with a video. It'll be very interesting to see how some of those prices go, because there's not hedge opportunities out there that are very equitable. So it'll be interesting to see. But I guess for me, I'd like to see a more functional market. If there is another stimulus, I would plead with USDA that they get some actual people that are in the industry in the room so they can get it right and get it to the people it belongs to. And I know the intentions were good, but this just falls in not the right places necessarily. So I think going forward, we just got to say, we want to be in the room. We want to be in the conversation. Hopefully they allow that. And let's work on the rest of the fundamental things we have to do. Bringing the industry together on 50 and 14 is huge. That Grassley bill, a lot of momentum. And I know I'm not supposed to really get off topic, but I hope everybody signed on to that petition and calling their senators on that, because very important to put leverage and competition back in the market. That's what it's all about. So I'd leave it at that as my going forwards.
There we go. Very broad next steps. And Brett, you completed a very extensive analysis of, estimated economic losses because of COVID-19. And it showed that we were way above that $5.5 billion that we're going to be receiving from this current program. And for those of you who haven't seen Brett's analysis yet, go to uscattleman.org, click the In the News section, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see the report there. But Brett, you want to touch on that a little bit, and when you call your members of Congress this week or next week, what are some things that you're going to tell them about this program?
Well, everybody gets complaints, but what people really need is they need to hear the problem and a proposed solution. And getting back to the question, who was in the room or who was invited to participate, I don't know. There are people who are claiming, or that, they're claiming credit for working with Congress all along to get this done. I don't know if they'll claim credit for what a mess it turned out to be or not. We'll see. But I think that the way we fix this is you call your congressmen, your senators, you tell them what you would like to see going forward. Like Justin said succinctly, the cat's out of the bag now on this. I don't think we're going to change this program. What we need to do is drive home the importance, number one, of saving the feedlot sector and the farmer feeder, the small and medium-sized feedlots that are really the heart of our our industry and our price independence. And then making sure that we have that we have some input if they are going to fund, if they're going to provide any new funding. So that would be my suggestion on what to say, and the people to contact are your elected representatives. Call your senators, call your Congress people, and let them know what you think and why it is important that they do something differently the next time they do it, and what actually you suggest they do. So that's what I have to say on that. As far as the report goes, Leah, there were 2 reports submitted to the USDA, one by the U.S. Cattlemen and one by I think it was sponsored by NCBA. Both reports came in within just 2 or 3 percentage points of each other on the total impact to the beef industry, and it was right at $14 billion. And that was split pretty evenly between all 3 sectors: cow-calf, the stalker, backgrounder, grower, however you want to call it, and the feedlot sector. So, but we were told that the USDA got $60 billion in requests, and they had $20 billion to spend. So prorated out, it's not, we got our share. It just is not going to cover nearly as much as especially the feedlots need to stay whole. And like Justin said, it is important that they stay in business, because they're the ones buying our calves every fall.
Well, there we go. So maybe you're not comfortable calling your members of Congress. Maybe you've never done this before. We've got good news for you. U.S. Cattlemen's Association is hosting its first virtual Washington, D.C. fly-in. So you'll be staying at home, of course, and you're going to be tuning in via teleconference, via video conference. But we unfortunately had to cancel our annual in-person fly-in. We're still on stay-at-home orders here in DC, and there's really no end in sight, it feels like. So we've canceled our annual fly-in, but we'd still love to stay engaged with folks on the Hill, folks in the administration. And so what we've come up with is this virtual fly-in. And what's going to happen is you'll sign up via the link that I'll drop in the comments here momentarily. You'll be broken out in USCA's geographic regions. Your board member will serve as the meeting lead, and we'll connect with your members of Congress. So it's a good time for first timers. If you've never been to DC, you can kind of get a feel and a flair for how these meetings go, and get, your feet wet, so to say. But we'll host these all throughout the month of June. More meeting details, dates, times, etc. They'll be emailed to you when you sign up. So it'll depend on who from your region joins you, which members of Congress that we reach out to. But we do hope that you'll get a meeting with both of your senators and your congressmen. So it's free to attend. We don't try to make a profit off these things. This is very important. It's part of our work as a grassroots advocacy organization that we get folks connected to their members of Congress. So you're getting absolutely invaluable advocacy for the low price of $100 a year. So all you've got to do is go to our website, uscattlemen.org, become a member, and you too can be involved in this policymaking process. Now, as Vice President Tupper alluded to, there are so many things to talk about, but some of our top priorities that we'll be discussing at this fly-in are marketing and competition reform, especially the mandatory price reporting reauthorization and these COVID-19 relief funds. I think those are going to be some of our top priorities as we go into this virtual fly-in. We're also going to discuss labeling, not only product of the USA or country of origin labeling, but labeling on alternative proteins. Just because we're in this quarantine mess doesn't mean that these plant-based protein companies are labeling their products accurately. So we'll discuss that. We're also going to talk trade, especially Brazilian beef. From our perspective, it's absolutely absurd that we're importing beef from a country that uses child and forced labor to create their product. That's obviously a huge advantage, an economic advantage for their producers over our producers. And so they're able to produce a very cheap product using illegal labor if it were to happen here in the US. We're also going to talk transportation and hours of service reform. We were very excited earlier this year that a couple senators jumped on, and I think we found a pathway forward here for these hours of service reforms that we've been working on for a number of years now. And then finally, public lands and environment issues. There's so many between the BLM revising their grazing regulations this year, to sage grouse issues, to waters of the US, plenty to talk about there, especially in those southwestern and more arid regions. So again, all you have to do to attend, we'll drop the link in the comment section. It looks like our Secretary Whitney Klasna has already shared that, so good. You can also find on our Facebook page, you go to the events, you click attending on the virtual fly-in, and we'll make sure you get all the information there. But I tried to get that all out as quick as I could because we're at the top of the hour here. So if there's any questions, comments, lingering concerns, drop them in the comments. We've got a full week ahead of us. Again, meeting with USDA FSA, meeting with folks on Capitol Hill, meeting with folks in the administration. Take us home. What are our closing thoughts here? What do you want folks to leave this live stream knowing, thinking, and doing next?
Well, I just hope that we were able to answer a few questions. Be patient with your local FSA offices. It's going to be difficult for them to get this out and administered. I don't think it's going to be a thing where that they're going to run out of money and then you have to be first to get it in there. I think you're going to get it funded if you apply for it, but be respectful and give them some time at your local FSA offices. Continue to support your cattle groups that are working for you. I tell you, I couldn't be prouder to be a part of an organization that has a great team in DC. Only Leah, do you make Brett and I look good on this thing, which is difficult to do. I'm telling you, that's really hard to get done. And we have a great group that works for us. We have a great leadership team. I can't thank Brett Crosby enough. When it comes to numbers, or we need to get to a meeting with facts, I'm telling you, this guy gets it. So I really want to thank our team. And I just want to encourage everybody to get involved. Now is the time. Now is when we got to make change. And we don't need to be beating around the bush with other cattle groups throwing each other under the bus. We've got to get stuff done. And that's what we're all about. And that's been our mission statement here. And hopefully this was some useful information for you. And we're going to continue to work our tails off. I guarantee you, conference calls and having a full-time team in DC is where it's at when everything's happening. So thank you, Leah. Thank you, Brett. That sums it up for me, and appreciate everybody getting on here.
Mr. Crosby, any closing thoughts, comments? You'll continue the conversation on Twitter, right? Maybe link.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always active on Twitter, and everything Justin said, and keep your chin up. Saddle bronc riders, when they're in a tough spot, it's keep your mind in the middle and your heels down, toes out, and just stick the ride. And that's kind of what we've got to do right here. It's kind of tough right now. Stay positive, and be active. Call your congressional delegation or the U.S. Cattlemen's. Call Leah, and be actively engaged, and just be positive, and we'll get through this.
All right. Well, you heard it here. Another edition of Facts Only Friday. Thanks for joining us. Join us next week, and we will be in the Facebook comments, we'll be on YouTube, and we'll be on Twitter answering any other questions that you have. So thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you guys next time.